Good evening. How is everyone tonight? It's a little dark in here. Gotta put in a new light bulb. So give me just a second to get settled. I'm never ready when the camera turns on. Um, Now my computer is going to be really slow. Okay. I always have my computer pulled up when I do these to make sure that I can see your comments and respond to you in real time or as soon after. Again, just so everyone knows, I am not a medical doctor, and please do not take anything in this class as substitute for medical advice. And then for those of you who don't know, why am I qualified to teach this? Well, I am a certified nutritional consultant. I'm a certified health specialist. I'm trained as a traditional naturopath. I'm a certified Inform coach. I've got a few more. I'll actually be posting my credentials in an album here soon, so you can see them as I add to them and know what they are. So tonight we're going to be talking about one of the keys to health. This one's a really big one. It's a really great place to start, whether you are wanting to stay healthy or get healthy. This is one of the foundations that we need to work on. So first off, a lot of people don't seek nutritional advice or natural health help until they have a disease that's become chronic enough that there's some unwanted symptoms, or maybe they've gotten on a few prescription drugs and they're dissatisfied with the results of those. Actually, the way that we restore health is the way that we keep it in the first place. So if you're healthy, what we're going to talk about tonight is going to be one of the things you might want to think about in order to stay healthy. And if you have some chronic diseases and illnesses, then what we talk about tonight is going to be important for helping you reestablish good health. Natural health is amazing because it really simplifies diseases. When we break it down, there's really only one disease, and that is caused by stress on the body. Now, that stress can come in multiple forms, but really most of it is either a deficiency, our body is lacking some important nutrient that it needs, or it's a toxicity issue. The body needs help processing and getting rid of toxins. So whatever your disease, we can break it down that it's caused by one of those two things. We can avoid deficiencies by making sure that we're getting in the nutrients that our body needs, and then we can help our body detox actually. So the good news is the body was made to heal itself. I don't believe that prescription drugs heal. And I'm not going to tell you that a supplement is going to heal you. That would be like saying that a nail could build a house. So the nail isn't what's doing the work, it's just part of the building material. It's the same thing with herbs, foods, supplements. Those are just the building materials that we need for a healthy body. So in the same way, a doctor's not healing a broken bone. They don't heal that. They just set it. They put it in a cast, and that way the bone is in the right place for it to knit itself back together. We might use a poultice on a broken bone or take some supplements, and again, that is just helping the body providing it with the materials that it needs to heal the broken bone, or removing the inflammation that might be slowing down the process. But again, that actual herb isn't healing anything. Your body is doing all of the work. We just need to provide it with what it needs in order to do that. In the same way, a symptom is just a sign that something is wrong in the body. It's not the actual problem, it's the body's way of talking to you. So, are you listening? Do you pay attention at the first sign of something going wrong in your body and pursue what could be causing it? Those symptoms, they could range, they could be anything like bloating or lack of energy, or maybe we're not sleeping so well, we have frequent headaches, aches and pains. When this happens, your body isn't asking for a prescription, it wants nutrition. Our body craves nutrients. So that's a strange thing to think about when we have a craving. If we could actually sit down and listen better, we could figure out what our body actually wants, because I guarantee you it's really not a Big Mac. So what we're talking about today is that nutrition. How can we make sure that we're getting the nutrients from the foods that we're eating? So one of the common phrases, taglines in natural health is, we are what we eat. Some of you may have heard that. But taking it a step further, we are what we absorb. Have you heard that one before? Well, we've got one step further. Scientific research is showing that we are actually what our microbes eat. So in subsequent classes, you're going to hear me talking about the microbiome a lot. This is actually a really important part of our body, our immune system. It really affects all of us, and it has to do with the bacteria that lives in us and on us. And they actually outnumber our human cells 10 to 1. So we've got a lot of them. They're really small. We don't see them. But this is, our microbiome is one of the most important parts of our body, and we need to be sure that we're taking care of it. So, foods, those nutrients that we need, generally come from foods. When we break foods down, they're made up of fats, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, fiber. But in order to utilize these food molecules, we need to break them down into a smaller form that our body can use, absorb, digest, and get the nutrients from. Well, that's what enzymes are for. And everything living contains enzymes. Life is actually not possible without enzymes. And by the time that you've heated something to 130 degrees, all of the enzymes are destroyed. So 130 degrees really isn't that hot, especially when it comes to foods that we're eating. If you were at a restaurant and you were served a soup that was 130 degrees, it would taste lukewarm, and I guarantee you, unless you're like the nicest, most polite person in the world, you would send that back and be like, hey, can you warm this up for me? So another way that we can see enzymes in action, for instance, is an apple. It falls from a tree, it gets bruised. So we think of it as, spoiled, that dark brown spot that's happening on the apple. It, as we sit and we watch it for a day or two, it gets really mushy, really soft. And we think that it's spoiling. What's happening is that it's actually being digested. And that's because of the enzymes that are in that apple. The apple is a living food. And the same thing is at work when we chew and we eat that apple. We're digesting it, utilizing those enzymes. So we were born, our bodies were born with their own supply of enzymes. And Western medicine will tell you that you were born with enough enzymes that you will need for the rest of your life. I'm going to tell you I don't believe that. So it may have been true 100 years ago that we were born with enough enzymes, but that was before we started canning and processing foods and making them shelf stable for longer periods of time. In order to make food last longer on the shelf, we actually have to kill the enzymes in it. We have to heat it above 130 degrees and kill those enzymes so that they don't digest and break down the food before we can eat it. So if you asked me, any person really said, should I take supplemental enzymes? I would ask you, did you grow up your entire life eating at least 50% of your food raw, and do you continue to do so today? I personally was not raised that way. I did not eat a lot of raw foods growing up, maybe had an apple a day or an orange a day. Really, raw foods were not a significant part of my diet, and I struggle to incorporate them as an adult because of that. It's just not a natural thing to do. So I take digestive enzymes when I remember them with every single meal. So let's say that you are a health nut. You were raised by health nuts. You eat a diet largely consisting of raw foods. But are you getting those foods? Are they harvested at the peak of their ripeness and you're eating them within just a couple of days? Because if you're buying raw foods that were bought in the grocery store, those were picked before they were fully ripe, before their enzymes had fully developed in them. And that's why they are shelf stable enough to be stored and transferred across the country or flown overseas, and then sit on your grocery store shelves long enough for you to buy them. So when you walk in and the shelves are full of, say, green bananas, they're not fully ripe yet. Those bananas probably will not ever develop enough enzymes in them to fully help you digest them. So I would question that even those of us, unless we're growing our own raw food, and that's the majority of our diet, that we're just not getting enough enzymes. So it has been suggested by some natural health doctors, they've actually come to the conclusion that many, if not all, degenerative diseases that humans suffer and die from are caused by the excessive use of enzyme-deficient cooked and processed foods. Has anyone heard of Pottinger's cats? So Dr. Pottinger, he studied over 900 cats over the course of 10 years and noticed that those cats that were fed exclusively raw milk and raw meats maintained much better health. They had really good bone structure and density. They had very few diseases. They had no problems reproducing. And they even had a better temperament. They were nicer cats. You'd want to be around them. So we all probably know somebody grouchy. The best thing for them might actually be if you bought them some food enzymes as their next gift. So once, in order to study, we have the group of cats that were fed the raw diet, but then we had a group of cats that Dr. Pottinger started feeding cooked meat and milk that had been heated over 130 degrees. These cats began to have more diseases, more structural problems. They had problems reproducing, and by the third generation, there was actually a lot more birth defects and infant mortality rates among these unhealthy cats. By that third generation, the incidence of skin diseases and allergies increased. So it was about 5% in the healthy cats, and those cats that were fed the cooked diet by the third generation had 90% of them had skin diseases and allergies just from the change in their diet. Their bones were softer, so they had more structural issues. They actually began developing hypothyroidism and other typical degenerative diseases. And by the fourth generation, the cats died out. So, back to how does this affect us? I want to encourage you, we can prevent chronic diseases, but we need to eat whole, not refined foods, and we need to eat living foods, not canned and processed foods. So what is an enzyme? An enzyme is a large protein molecule that is found in all living things. So until you heat that to 130 degrees, at which time it is considered dead. Enzymes have two parts to them, but we're not going to get into that tonight for, that'd be a whole science class right there. But what's really important to remember is that vitamins and minerals are useless to us if we don't have the enzymes in order to digest and absorb them. So one of the most common supplements people want is a multivitamin. Anyone who's even a little health conscious is probably taking a multivitamin. But what we don't think about is that we need to be taking and replacing our enzymes in order for our body to utilize the vitamins and minerals in there. Enzymes also get more important as we get older. That's where, as we get older, we lose the ability to digest our food. Again, through that poor nutrition from not eating enough raw fruits and vegetables. So the enzymes, when we take them with our food, they can actually start pre-digesting our food for us, help breaking it down, make it easier on our body. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes when we're at rest and then we eat. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes for our stomach acid to go from its resting pH to a low enough pH to begin digesting the foods that you have just eaten. And as we get older, our stomachs may even lose that ability to lower its pH enough to digest the foods. We'll get into digestion. That's whole nother class. But one of the primary causes of heartburn is this inability of the stomach to properly digest our food, the inability to secrete enough hydrochloric acid. So it's actually a deficiency of acid that causes the vast majority of heartburn. So when you go to the doctor and you're talking about heartburn and acid reflux, and he gives you an antacid, he's like, go take this. You're actually perpetuating the problem if you have an underacidic stomach, and you're further inhibiting the ability of your body to break down and digest food. So you'll see a little later on as we get into this, some of the issues that can be caused by our food not being broken down and digested. So what I would recommend doing instead, if I was suffering from heartburn or acid reflux, is I would take a full spectrum food enzyme that contains betaine hydrochloride, which might be labeled betaine HCl. We'll get into that a little later on, but unless your stomach acid was specifically tested and they told you that you had high stomach acid, which only happens in about 20% of people, and that's usually the younger population, usually younger than 30, then I personally would not take an acid. So we've got this poorly working digestive system that can't break down our food. So we can take some enzymes when we eat our food, and this can increase the amount of food that we're able to digest and absorb. It can increase digested carbohydrates by 60%, proteins by 30%, and fats by 10%. And that's before they even leave the stomach. We'll go further into digestion in another class or two, but our stomach does not do all of the digestive work. Digestion begins in the mouth, and there's a lot of other organs and body parts that are involved in the digestive tract. That full spectrum enzyme should be plant-based. We can't use animal enzymes for this action. They'll commonly be called pancreatine, would be an animal enzyme. And that's not going to be as beneficial for that digestive ability. So here's another way to think about enzymes, is they are catalysts. They make things happen. So digesting food is just one body process that requires enzymes, but there are many more. And there's many more body processes that require enzymes, not just digestion, if that wasn't clear. Without enzymes, some of these processes that our body goes through, they would take so long that they might not ever happen at all. So, for instance, there's this enzyme, orotidine 5-phosphate decarboxylase. I almost had it. Is an enzyme that allows a certain reaction to take place in just a millisecond. So not even a second, 1,000th of a second. Without that enzyme, that same reaction would take millions of years. So that shows you how important enzymes are. They speed things up so that they happen nearly instantaneously, when without them, that might not ever happen at all. So enzymes are commonly end in A's, which would be spelled ASE. There are a few exceptions. We talked about pancreatine is an enzyme, pepsin is an enzyme, but the vast majority of them will end in A's. And then the beginning of the word tells us what that enzyme acts upon. For instance, protease is what's needed to digest and break down proteins. Lipase digests fats, which fats are also commonly called lipids. You learn that in nutrition classes, so that's where the lipase comes from. Amylases digest and break down carbohydrates or starches. Lactase helps digest lactose, so that's an example of a few of the enzymes. So, going back to raw foods, yes, if the food is living and harvested correctly, then it contains enzymes. But that raw food only contains enough enzyme to digest itself. So that's where we really can't make up for this enzyme deficit once we get one, because the food only has enough to digest itself. So you'd have to do a completely raw diet in order to deal with that deficiency. So if the food was cooked, canned, processed, or preserved by any traditional means, then the enzymes in it were destroyed. When we're out of enzymes, the body is then stuck with food that it cannot break down. This can lead to a lot of different problems. Some of the first symptoms that we would notice of food not being able to be broken down and digested would include food allergies. So if you're starting to develop food allergies, you might question whether your body has enough enzymes. If we have gas or bloating, heartburn, constipation, or diarrhea, these are just the minor problems that would happen at the beginning of of the issue, really, when we first started not being able to break down foods. And then these undigested foods will then be the cause of a lot of other major chronic degenerative diseases. So another problem that can happen when the body is unable to do its job, when a certain organ can't secrete the substance that it's supposed to, it will actually start to enlarge and hypertrophy. It would be like you working harder and longer hours, but you're just getting deeper and deeper into debt. You're not able to keep up with your bills. You're going to get stressed out and burnt out. This again happens in our bodies when they can't keep up with its job because it's not been given the proper nutrition and tools that it needs. So a common thing that probably the most common enlargement that most people are aware of would be the thyroid. That will often enlarge, and that means it's unable to keep up with its work. It can't do its job. Our heart can enlarge when it's unable to sufficiently pump enough blood throughout our body. In men, it'll be common for the prostate gland to enlarge. In women, the ovaries. And even our pancreas will enlarge when it's not keeping up with its role in digestion. So most of our undigested food is proteins, and undigested proteins cause a lot of problems and inflammation in our body. We want our good bacteria to be about 80% of the bacteria in and on our body, and we only want 20% bad bacteria. That would be a good healthy ratio. We can't ever get rid of the bad fully, but we can at least vastly outnumber it. For most of us, that ratio is reversed, where we have problems, diseases, health issues, because 80% of the bacteria in our microbiome is bad, and we only have about 20% good. Not a good situation there. So that undigested food becomes food for the bad bacteria, and that's a big reason why they can multiply and take over and cause all of these problems. This undigested food also putrefies or rots in the body. That can be a cause of a lot of the gas and bloating that you're feeling with. Is, you know, when fruit sits on your counter and it starts to rot and go bad, it puts out these gases. So think of that happening in your intestines, and then that's why your stomach expands, you feel bloated, you don't feel good, your pants won't button. So that's happening inside our bodies. Then that in itself can lead to a big health issue, constipation. So nobody wants to talk about it, but I can't emphasize enough that constipation kills. I had a cousin that has severe health problems that started with constipation. My husband almost lost his grandmother due to constipation. She had an intestine that burst. You don't want poo to get outside of your intestines. It's not good for you. That can kill you quickly. So when we have this rotting or putrefying food in us, our body's not working right. We can get more and more constipated. And constipation is wildly misunderstood in Western medicine. You might go to a doctor and you're like, yeah, I go like 2 or 3 times a week. I have a bowel movement. And they'll be like, well, that's normal for you. No, that's not normal for anyone. That's not healthy. That's not good. Constipation is defined as having less than 1 bowel movement a day. So even if for most of us it's in the morning. So even if you wake up, you're like, I'm regular. I go every single morning. That's not regular. That is still constipated. More on that in another class. But again, if you are having one or less bowel movements a day, there's such a significant amount of more energy that you will have when you can increase that to 2 or 3 times a day and have normal bowel movements. So I've got a long list for you. That this undigested food in your body, this is some of the problems that it can cause. So I'm going to read these off. Dermatosis, eczema, psoriasis, middle and inner ear problems, eye strain, foul urine odor, tachycardia, cardiac arrhythmias, migraines, eclampsia, thyroid goiter, arthritis, low back pain, sciatica, fibromyalgia, myofasciitis, asthma, gas, bloating, constipation, Crohn's disease, diarrhea, food allergies, foul stool smell, gastritis, heartburn, hiatal hernia, inflammatory bowel disease, ileocecal valve problems, unhealthy weight loss from malassimilation of food, body odor, halitosis, depression, melancholy, epilepsy, excessive worry, incoordination, irritability, I'm almost done, hang in there, lack of confidence, loss of concentration and memory, mental sluggishness, mental dullness, schizophrenia, senility, sensory polyneuritis. So that's some of the things that happen when we follow this train of not eating healthy foods, not having enough enzymes to digest them, not breaking it down correctly, and it can lead to a whole host of issues. So that's why it's so important that we are digesting our food properly. Whether you're watching this live or you're watching the recording back, if you have any questions, please type those into the comments. I'd love to answer them for you. We are going to have a second class of enzymes because there is more to share. And in these 2 classes, I'm probably only going to share, like a 10th, a 15th of what I've read and learned about enzymes, but just giving you some basics so you can get started and start taking control of your health. If it was me and I was noticing some of these symptoms, I personally would not wait for the next class. I would get started on some enzymes today. I will post some links in the description of this video of some of my favorite enzymes. If you need help picking out one personally for you, then go ahead and drop a question into the comments, and I might need a little information about you, which we can do privately, but I will definitely help you pick out an enzyme to get started with. This is video 2 in my Basics of Health series. So if you're watching this one and you haven't watched the first one, I encourage you to do so. You can find it in this group under the videos tab, or you can search in this group for Basics of Health or hiatal hernia. Both of those should lead you to that first video, and it will say at the top Basics of Health Class 1. If you enjoy these videos, then please purchase through Nature Sunshine through my affiliate links that I list. This is how you can support me and help me be able to put out more of these videos. Just be sure that during checkout at naturesunshine.com, I'm listed as your sponsor. My sponsor number is 566404 if you don't purchase through a link. Also, if you live in the Staten, Oregon area, I am available for in-person consultations, and I recently did just get started doing online consultations as well. So I would be honored if you chose me to help you in your path to amazing, vibrant health. I believe that is out there and is available for everyone. I refuse to be deterred from that belief. You can also book me online at wheretostartnaturalhealth.com for online consultations. And that's everything for this evening. Again, please post your questions in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them during our next live video. Otherwise, have a blessed evening, everyone. Take care.